And what's going on, guys? So welcome back to the channel. For those of you new here, my name is Kale. I am an endgame player with 4 accounts, 4 of which are all in the endgame. I'm now calling the 4th baby account in the endgame since it is currently running the incursion raids. And anyway, so kind of what I wanted to talk about, a couple things kind of going on in the community currently. So first and foremost, we have had a lot of content creators quitting recently, as well as just players in general quitting. So I feel like a lot of the people that used to put out kind of these type of videos really aren't around as much. And one of our, a mode that's coming up, essentially, that I have kind of always enjoyed is the Dark Dimensions. And we have the next iteration, which is going to be Dark Dimension 6. It is requiring Gear Tier 18, essentially level 95 characters, and the reward for that is going to be Super Scroll. Now, I want to kind of touch on planning for Dark Dimension and kind of doing it in the most efficient way possible. And with 4 accounts, I like to think of myself as somewhat of an expert on efficiency. I can pretty much, I think, get an account up and running kind of close to endgame content in probably about, I'd say, maybe 3-4 months. And this is free to play, mind you. Obviously, if you're spending, you can do this a lot faster. But I think I've gotten really good at essentially the resource management aspect of this game, as well as, putting in your gear where it's going to give you the most bang for your buck, especially as a free-to-play player. And something I want to the first thing I want to touch on with Dark Dimension is there is no shame in not racing for these leaderboards. These leaderboards, like when you look at them, like first-time completions, these are going to be for people that are spending thousands of dollars on the game, and literally no joke when I say thousands of dollars. And chances are, if you're that type of player, you don't necessarily need to maybe DD6 plan, and you probably aren't watching this video. So this is a video for kind of the mortal players, the ones that are maybe light spenders, free to play, etc. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go into Dark Dimension 6, or any Dark Dimension for that matter, as efficiently as possible. And my normal go-to is characters I'm bringing into Dark Dimension. I really don't like when people suggest characters that their only use that you're going to get out of them is for Dark Dimension. When we're talking about Dark Dimension 6 now, to take a character from level 90 to level 95 is an insane amount of gold that you're investing in the character, not to mention all the gear. So to take in a character just for Dark Dimension is stupid, in my opinion. If you've got the resources to waste, sure, go right ahead. But again, you're probably not the type of person that's going to be watching this video in particular. So what I always try to do is I look at characters that I'm using in other game modes, and I am in a very raid-focused alliance. I am I like raiding, so I always will try to bring in raid characters first and foremost into Dark Dimension, and I'm going to get the most longevity out of these characters. Maybe not as long as it used to be, but that's going to kind of give me the most bang for my buck, and it's an investment that I'm going to see a return on a daily basis because I raid every day. So some things I want to talk about when you are starting to plan for Dark Dimension. I like to kind of hyper focus what I'm working on. So what I'll do is I actually really like this verse battle favorites tab, and you'll see here currently, and I can take invaders out of here for the moment. What I like doing here is basically anything I'm currently actively working on as far as gear, you'll normally find them in this tab. So kind of what I'm working on currently, I am still working on kind of beefing up my raid teams a little bit. We're currently incursion 1.3, so I'm actually currently beefing up my Mystic team, so I'm kind of taking them to level 95. Magneto is here because he is part of the Death Seed team, and I'm working on getting them all to G17 so I can get the final costume with Archangel and then get a big boy Apocalypse. Anyway, so what I highly suggest is when you actually get to the point where you're starting to DD6 plan, you basically bring these characters into this verse battle, because you can kind of really look at them kind of, you know, without all the clutter of the normal roster. And to do that, all you have to do is when you are on the character screen, click this little verse, and it brings them over to this tab. So it's a nice little way, I think, to kind of stay organized, and it certainly helps me out a lot. The next thing I want to talk about is for the first 2 nodes in DD6 in particular, but pretty much the first couple nodes in like Dark Dimension 4 and 5 are going to be unrestricted nodes, and you can basically take in any characters. There's no trait restrictions, no legendaries and all that stuff. But what I like to do so you're not kind of, you know, doing as much resources essentially, is I will actually take in whatever the first section is going to be into my unrestricted. So in the case of Dark Dimension 6, the first section is going to be global. So I'm basically going to work on my global team first. The other thing I want to suggest is keep your DD6 teams fluid. And what I mean by that is Scopely is releasing characters at like record paces. It's been going on since the Apocalypse Saga, and it's probably going to continue throughout this year. And the general rule of thumb is newer characters are always going to be stronger than older ones. And with the current incursion raids, for example, the current tech team, Bionic Avengers, does absolutely nothing in the tech section. So we probably are getting a new tech team sooner rather than later. And depending on where their, you know, trait is going to be, whether they're global, cosmic, city, you know, they might be good characters to take in. So don't actually start, you know, planning your DD6 until you really kind of have an idea. Like, take it one section at a time. So start with global, get that global team worked up. Once you are finished with global, see what cosmic characters are available. Maybe there's new cosmic characters. So keeping your DD6 planning fluid is very important. And I want to now transition over to the Marvel Strike Force website. And if you basically click on your account and you go to roster, you will then see this screen pop up. You can click Dark Dimension Planner, and on this planner you can actually put in characters that you are, you know, thinking about taking, and it'll actually show you all the pieces of gear that you still require to basically take up these characters. Something I want to also mention is when you're looking at the traits, you want to try to keep them fairly even and as close to even as possible. So, you know, you're looking at mine currently. I've got 4 bio characters. We've got 3 mutant characters, 4 mystic, 4 skill, and only 2 tech. Basically, kind of what I'm banking on is we're going to be getting a tech team sooner rather than later. So depending on where those origins are, or traits maybe, whether they're global, cosmic, or city, I plan on making some adjustments. And so let's talk about this. So let's look at global. Global, who am I bringing in and why? What I want to talk about is if you actually scroll down here, it tells you how many actual G18 pieces these characters need and how many uniques they're going to require. So basically, if a character only requires 18 of these uniques, and let's zoom in just a little bit here. So if a character only requires 18 of these uniques, that basically only means that they have 1 piece of G18 gear. If it's 36, they need 2, and so on and so forth. So the cheaper a character is, the easier it's going to be to kind of take them into Dark Dimension 6. Now keep in mind also, with the cheaper characters, they're sometimes not always the best. There are obviously exceptions sometimes. But when we look at who I chose to take in, and I'm going to remove these real quick. So when you look, who did we have? So we had Gambit, he's very cheap, he's only 36. We had Cap 2, we had Bucky Barnes, these are all cheap characters. We then also had Nemesis, who is a fairly cheap. He's a little bit more on the more expensive side, but I was trying to mix it up a little bit. So we've got Nemesis, and then lastly, we've got Apocalypse. Now, Apocalypse is stupid expensive. Like, stupid expensive. But Apocalypse is going to have some, I think, long-term use. I'm still going to be able to use him in Arena. He's still good in Cosmic Crucible. He's still good in War. And I can use him in multiple sections. So that is why I'm bringing in Apocalypse. Now, will this change possibly? Maybe. It'll kind of depend on, you know, the next couple patches. But that's kind of who I'm thinking currently. And again, you know, some of these other characters, so let's kind of look at Cosmic. You know, in Cosmic, again, we're looking for the cheaper characters. So Cosmic is very Mystic heavy, just to, you know, be fair. But we've got Cersei over here. We've got Kestrel. She's pretty cheap. Kang is cheap, and he's going to be a tech character. Icarus, you know, fairly cheap. And Cosmo over here, she's fairly cheap as well. And Cosmo, I'm not 100% sold on, but she's a bio character, and, you know, I'm not using a lot of bio characters, and that's kind of why I brought her, at least for the time being. Kind of the same thing, City. Not a whole lot of great city choices, like when you're looking at what's left over. So we have, you know, the symbiotes, which I would not do. We've got Web Warriors, which again, I really wouldn't do. I just don't think they have kind of that same oomph that they used to have. I mean, I'm not using them in raids. I'm not using them in Cosmic Crucible. They're on War Defense, so I'm not really using them there either. So I basically kind of thought of, like, who am I using on a semi-regular basis? And when it came down to it, I was looking at, I still use 2099 on Cosmic Crucible Defense. I am using Dagger and Cloak in Cosmic Crucible. And then basically, I brought in Squirrel Girl and Shang-Chi just because they're cheaper characters, and again, it's skill and bio, so it's a trait that I haven't used a whole lot of. Kind of looking at some of these lower valued ones, I thought about Firestar, but I think honestly I'm going to be really pressed for mutant gear after bringing up Apocalypse, so I was trying to kind of limit my mutants a little bit. Again, we don't know what type of tech characters we're getting. We might maybe get some city tech characters, so that might be an option. And if that is the case, I probably will take out Squirrel Girl. And if I get multiple tech characters, I might actually take out Shang-Chi as well. So yeah. Now, the sections that are very undeterminate at the moment, the non-Horseman Legendary section, I'm not sure what I'm bringing here, if I'm being totally honest. I think, depending on how long this DD6 run takes, I'm going to probably try to bring in as many of the newer legendaries as possible that are probably coming out this year. So, you know, Nova, I think, is a good choice. The jury's still out, I think, as far as, like, the mass use I'm going to be getting out of Nova. Using him in War. I've got him currently on Cosmic Crucible Defense. I don't know if it's going to be, you know, I like him on defense or if I like him on offense, but I thought as a newer legendary, he's probably going to be the way to go. And the other four, I don't know. It's going to depend on how long it takes me to get to the legendary section and how many of the new legendary characters are out. Once that does happen, though, depending on, you know, if I've got 2 or maybe 3 of them, I'm probably going to be looking at bringing in some of the cheaper legendary characters for the most part. I probably would bring up Nick Fury, as I'll be getting long-term use out of him, and then it'll really just kind of depend on what uniques I have, and that's kind of what I'm talking about as far as being fluid, is these plans could go totally out the window, because maybe the uniques I'm getting, you know, maybe for some reason I'm getting a lot of mutant uniques, and I've got the liberty to take in more mutant characters, or maybe I'm getting more mystic uniques. So that's what I mean by being fluid. This is my tentative plan, but you should never do a Dark Dimension planning guide and have it set in stone. I think that's silly. So yeah, I would highly encourage looking at the DD6 planner and just kind of give yourself a rough idea. And, you know, kind of you can keep track of kind of what you need to farm as far as these gear pieces rather. So let's transition back over to Vhagar. And the other thing I want to talk about, again, from a free-to-play perspective, because again, I don't think these videos are going to be geared towards a Kraken or a heavy spender, because this is not going to be an issue for you. But let's talk about actually getting those G18 unique pieces. And currently, the only way to get them is going to be in the gold store or in these teal, what are they calling them? These teal epic orbs. And you're going to get these teal epic orbs by running your incursion raids. And then you obviously have the pieces in the gold store. Now, what I'm going to say might be a little on the controversial side, but because of the current gold situation, there's a major gold crunch in the game right now. I don't think it's actually a good use of your gold to be buying these G18 pieces. And I stopped doing it. I am kind of getting low on gold orbs. Like on Vhagar, I did just open a bunch for the current Cosmo event, but I think I only had like 100 gold orbs saved up, and it's not a lot of gold. And if you are buying these pieces on a daily basis multiple times a day, you're going to see your gold go absolutely like down the tube. And while these are important pieces, but you're not even going to have the gold then to level your characters. So what I'm suggesting, it might take you a little bit longer to get into Dark Dimension, but I think your main source of these G18 pieces should be from the Teal Epic Orb. So what I would suggest is if you're serious about trying to get into Dark Dimension 6 as soon as possible, what I would start doing is starting to push your raid content into the higher incursion raids. Because the higher you go in your incursion raids, the better your rewards are going to be. So, you know, if you look here in difficulty 3, if you are hitting 60%, you are getting a full orb and some change every day. And, you know, is this a lot? No, but it should add up. And Dark Dimension 6 is not going live, I believe, until June 27th. And honestly, realistically, I think I might be lucky if I get in within maybe the first 3 months, if I'm being totally honest. And I'm okay with that. You know, I do not spend on this game. I do a little bit of light spending on Vhagar, but on the other 3 accounts, I don't spend at all. And I am realistic. You know, I'm not going to be on that top 100 leaderboard. I just don't spend that much. And I think you have to kind of go into Dark Dimension 6 with like realistic expectations. Yes, I want Super Scroll, you know, sooner rather than later, just because I think he is going to be, you know, he is going to change the game up a little bit, as Dark Dimension characters tend to do. So the sooner I have him, you know, the better maybe my arena team will be, or a Cosmic Crucible team, or something like that. But I'm going to go in there without spending any money. So going in with realistic expectations, I think, is very important. And it's not a matter of, you know, if you wanted to do the race into Dark Dimension 6, that's fine. You know, I don't fault those players. I don't shame those players. There's definitely a thrill behind that. But unless you have that massive amount of disposable income, it's not realistic for most of your players. So going in with just like, you know, hey, I'll get there when I get there, and keeping your planning very fluid, because when we're talking about opening orbs, it is a total random chance of what you're going to get. You could get it where you're getting just like massive amounts of Mystic gear, or, you know, maybe you're super lucky and you're getting like 1 piece of Origin gear per orb. Like, you know, one time you get Mystic, one time you get Mutant, you know, so on and so forth. But realistically, that's probably not going to happen. So keeping your Dark Dimension 6 teams very fluid, I think, is the way to go. So that's my maybe intro to Dark Dimension 6 planning. Hopefully you have found this video helpful, and maybe it's given you some insights on how to plan for Dark Dimension 6 yourself, or even Dark Dimension 4 or 5, depending on where you are at in the game. I can certainly kind of keep this updated as I do start kind of bringing up characters, and once I kind of get a little bit more concrete as to, not necessarily concrete, but basically a better idea of who I'm going to be taking in, I can certainly start doing some Dark Dimension 6 playthroughs. But yeah, I think that's going to be it for this video. I don't want to ramble too much, so hopefully you have found this video helpful. If you have, I really would appreciate a like and subscribe. It does mean the world to me. And I want to thank y'all so much for watching. Hopefully this has given you some insight on Dark Dimension 6 planning, and I will see you on the next video. Feel free to let me know also down in the comments videos you'd like to see, because I'm always happy to produce that content. Anyway, I've rambled enough. I will see you next time, and have a good one.